Hi, welcome back to Whimsical. My name is Stephanie and this is a channel about cross stitch, and today we're going to talk about your controversial cross stitch hot takes and I'm going to respond to them. This video was inspired, this is a trend on YouTube. It's not like it's not out in the ether, but there are two videos specifically that I will link to below that inspired me to want to do this video. The first is by the Stitchy Reader, who doesn't post YouTube videos anymore, but is still active on Instagram. And she had one about her, this exact same format a couple years ago. And it was back when I was like very new to cross stitch. And so I didn't even understand all of the topics that they were talking about. And so I thought it'd be fun to do this now. After I do this, I'm going to go back and re-watch her video to see if any of my initial instincts about her video, like my opinions or anything, has changed. But like I said, it's been about 2 years since I saw that one. And then the other one was my friend Hillary, who is Subpart Stitches on Flosstube, also has a manicure nail YouTube channel called Mediocre Manis. And she posted a video on using this trend on her manicure nail polish channel, and I watched the whole video. And even though like I'm not a nail polish girly, I'm a go get your nails done girly, but I'm not a home manicure, keep your nails done all the time person. And even I like loved watching that video, even though I'm not that, like, even though like most of the controversies in that video, like I was learning about the controversy as she was telling me her opinion. So I thought this would be fun to do. I asked you guys on Instagram and YouTube to send me your cross stitch hot takes, and I got over 50 of them. A couple of them are the same topic, so those I have mostly grouped together. Where I spotted them, it might be one or two slipped out. All right, I have created a wheel to spin so that they come up in random order instead of me spending a lot of time thinking about categorizing them, because I thought that might take some of the spice out of me responding to them if I like looked at them too long or thought about them too long. So I'm going to do a wheel. I'm not going to insert a graphic of the wheel because that will just take a really long time in editing. And I created this, or I decided to do this video because I have had less time to spend on this stuff lately because my childcare situation has changed. And so I'm even filming this later in the day than I normally would because other things piled up that I had to do ahead of this. So I'm not going to do any fancy editing. The point of this video is also to have an easy, breezy video for me to put out. So no wheel, but I did make one. That is how it's going to be drawn. And then if you're not subscribed, before we dive in, if you're not subscribed to the channel, love you to subscribe. My sister and I both run this channel. She's in, I think right now she's in about 25% of the videos because of her work situation, but we just put out a floss tube on Monday where both of our stitching was, and then this Monday I'm going to try to get out a solo floss tube, and then we also do lots of extras and tutorials, so we try to have 2 videos a week every Monday and Thursday. So if you're not subscribed, subscribe. And if this is a Friday video on accident because it doesn't get up on Thursday, well, we do try for Monday, Thursday. Okay, let's dive in. Your hot take: I don't mind stitching on Lugana. Okay, I don't know if this one, because there were different like fabric hot takes. I don't know if this one about Lugana is because other people don't like Lugana, but they prefer Aida or linen, or if it's that they just don't like Lugana and they prefer other even weaves, like I'm blanking on the names of the other even weaves, but like the one that they're just started, anyway, Modena and other things like that. I don't love Lugana when I have to do a lot of like specialty stitches and stuff because it can shred. I have had floss shredded in Lugana, but I don't mind stitching it for like smaller projects. I just quit doing my shadowing on it. And I know another reason, Fiber, Amy, had told one of my friends about, who told me that also stitching like big things like that on Lugana might not make sense because all the beads and stuff, when you're talking about a synthetic material, might like warp it and get it out of shape. So I do think that there are pluses and minuses to Lugana that, and I also think some people just like knowing that if they're stitching on, that they don't want the look of Aida because they want it to look more like smaller holes of the fabric, but they don't want to deal with linen. So like the slubs and stuff. So I get why people like Lugana. It is my least favorite because I personally find it has the downsides of linen with none of the plus sides of Aida. Like I like linen and Aida, but I own Lugana and I will stitch on it, and it doesn't bother me to stitch on it for like smaller projects, but I don't ever want to do anything big on it. But I get it. Okay, that was number one. Okay, I don't know. And my goal is not to hurt anyone's feelings of like if my preference isn't your preference or if somebody has an opinion that you don't agree with. The point is for us to all have fun. But I hope if you're a Lugana stitcher, I still love you and I still want you to enjoy your craft. I just want to use a different material. Okay. The look of finished cross stitch is kind of ugly. I much prefer the look of embroidery. So we're jumping right in the deep end towards the beginning. I disagree. I actually hate the look of embroidery, and I like the look of needlepoint. I like the look of cross stitch the best. I don't like the look of older cross stitches that are like, you know, the ones from like the 1930s and 40s that are like bigger. Like I'll see them at thrift stores and I will pass on that kind. But like if I'm in a thrift store and I'm looking at old needlework, I'm much more likely to get excited by an old cross stitch than an old piece of embroidery. I also find that like, I disagree. Okay, next one. This might be spicy for some people, but I genuinely think that many cross stitchers have way too many whips at once. Okay, well, I might be accused of that. I think there's a number of whips that everybody can carry that they enjoy, and there is a number that for them is too chaotic and too much. And they have to find that number, and there may be times when they live above that number. But I think there are stitchers who are perfectly content at over 100 whips, and some stitchers that are perfectly content at 5 whips, where 6 whips is too many. And everyone is fine at that number. Of course, it has to be, within your budget, your time frame, the amount of time that you but if you really want to do a project and you start at the project and you never finish the project, who cares? Like you got the enjoyment of stitching it if you're a process stitcher. And if you're a product stitcher, you probably don't have 100 whips, right? So like if you're a product, Alison and I made a video about being a process versus a product stitcher. I will link to it below. I'm a process stitcher. Now that I have more control over what goes on my own walls, I enjoy the products more, but it hasn't really encouraged me to finish more projects, because what encourages me to finish more projects is actually having like hard deadlines. And so that is another thing about like a deadline is part of the process. It's not the finished piece being on my wall isn't like what encourages me to finish it. So there's what I found is right now I'm at 76 whips. I was at 85 and I took a bunch off, but I found I didn't UFO them. And I'll link below to the video where I explain like what whips I was putting and why. But I didn't actually UFO them because they were too many whips. I UFO them because those were whips I wasn't excited to get back to. And the rest were things I am excited to get back to eventually. But also like I enjoy them. And so I don't feel bad about having a ton of whips. But I also, Alison has she had 16 at the whip parade. I think she said she's down to like 13 now. And she wants to get down below 10. I think she wants to get down to like below 5. Like that's her journey. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that either. I think it will make our whip parades real weird when it's like 99 and 1. But if that's what we need to be if that's where our happiness levels is stitching all year, then that's where it is. All right, next one. Heavily modeled, super colorful dyed fabric distracts from the colors of the stitching. I think it can. I think there's a kind of a rule a lot of people have in their heads, maybe doesn't get talked about a ton, which is like heavily modeled fabric, plain floss, maybe even down to like monochromatic floss. I definitely have a piece on my wall over there that is heavily modeled fabric with black monochromatic stitching over it that I adore. This piece, so this is Yellow Submarine, my Blackbird Designs. This fabric is pretty heavily modeled and the flosses are variegated, but it's one of my favorite things I've ever done, and I love looking at it, and I get compliments about it all the time. So I think it's like how you use it. And actually, I posted an Instagram photo yesterday of like the heavily modeled fabric that I'm using for Nora Corbett's Moon Glow. And I got a ton of compliments on the fabric because the way the design is really highlights the fabric that you use. And so it's an opportunity to pick really modeled fabric. I think I have seen times where I see people make choices about heavily modeled fabric that I wouldn't make because to me it is too distracting from the design, but they have a vision in their head. And as long as that is fulfilling their vision, then it should be the way they want it to be. I do save like my more heavily, like highly variegated flosses and stuff for monochromatic pieces on a more plain background, but that's not my preferred way to stitch anyway. So that's my take on that. But I see, like, there are definitely times when I'm like, ugh, but I keep it to myself. And also, like, sometimes that person will come back and say, like, actually, like, I need to restart it because it was too much. Because they just needed to see it and then it wasn't. It didn't work. But sometimes it works really well. Okay, the next one, traveling. There wasn't, like, any context to this of, like, I love traveling or I hate traveling. I'm going to assume this is from the perspective of someone who thinks traveling is good and they get annoyed when people complain or say that people shouldn't travel. I like traveling on full coverage. Like, I have started doing all my, not these two actually. Well, you can't see that one. I'll just take it down. Okay. So I have started doing, this is from my Cross Stitch and Ice and Fire book, which is in my Etsy shop. This is a Game of Thrones filming, that whole book is Game of Thrones filming locations, and this was a Game of Thrones filming location in Northern Ireland. So I stitched this on gridded Aida, and I traveled every single which way. And you can't tell on the back, it's not too thick or anything. But using the grid lines, I color completed this, and I just went from like highest, I don't think I went from highest to lowest, but I just color completed it. I traveled all over the sucker. I totally agree. Where I don't travel is on non-full coverage pieces where I can't competently count. You know, sometimes you'll find you can count to like 10 and sometimes you can't even count to 5. If I'm like on a non-full coverage piece and the placement of where I'm going really matters, as long as you can't see it through the fabric or anything. Like, so right now I'm working on Black and Sky on green fabric, so I have some leeway with green flosses to travel pretty far. But if I can't like confidently count it, I have already messed up so many times and I'm farting so much of it that I'm not traveling at all. But I really don't mind traveling when I can execute it correctly. So concept, I'm pro. Execution, I'm not always at the skill level, at the counting level I need to be at. As a former, I taught math for 2 years in high school, out of college. As a former math teacher, I'm not always competent enough at counting that I can pull it off. All right, next one. I love perforated paper. I know who you are, and you know who you are, and you know that this is propaganda. This is a down with perforated paper space. And I saw someone else recently. I can't remember. I'm not going to say who I think it was because in case I'm wrong, I don't want to like put them on blast. But I've like been very happy to find some like anti-perforated paper people that I can like commiserate with in life about this scourge on our society and on our craft. Now, I did recently find out that my L&S carries like a really good selection of perforated paper. So if I ever get curious about it, I can pick some up at my next stitchy day. I did a L&S walkthrough. I will link to below of Prairie Moon Primitives if you are in Oklahoma or North Texas. It may be of interest to you. And also, if you're just looking for perforated paper and you can't find some like of a specific color or whatever, and you're not local, it might be worth calling to see if they'll ship some to you. But no, perforated paper is the devil's sandpaper. I don't know where I was going with that. Okay, next one. I don't always conserve, save leftover bits of floss. I toss them. I don't either. I used to be really good about it, and I not good about it. I used to be more conservative about it, or I put it in an art jar and like I have like a half of an art jar saved. But now with my kids, honestly, I just take the bit and I just put it on the coffee table, and then one of my kids will knock it on the floor and it ends up being swept up days later, like whenever I get around to sweeping like the corners of the living room because we have hardwood floors. So I don't do a good job of that. I would love the concept of a tail end project, but really I know it would just, every time I try to rearrange how much stitching I do, it's just rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. So like if I need to do 500 stitches in a project that day, adding 10 or 20 or 30 to a tail end project just reduces the amount of time I'm spending on the thing I'm supposed to be spending on. So I just don't. But I think they're really cool. And I definitely think there's flosses where I'm sad just to get rid of like the like 10 or 20 stitches you might have left. Because I mostly stitch 2 over 2, that gives you little tiny bits usually by the end. It feels like less of a waste because you get less stitches out of it, even if conceptually it's as much as you might have at the end of like a 40 count if you had like less stitches to do of that color or whatever. That might be easier to then just take your needle and put into like a 40 count tail end project, whatever, but I'm not there. Okay, this art is and always has been political. I mean, yeah, like everything in life is political. What we stitch with is political, where it comes from. I mean, all you have to do is go open Instagram and see all of the shops talking about tariffs to know, like, if you're doing a craft where the supplies are made in different places in the world, then how you get those supplies is political. Who's allowed to do the craft and who has access to the craft is political, because how much money someone has and the resources available to them is political. If you have an LNS, it's political because you might have, like a city that can support it, or, some places it's prohibitively expensive to even start small businesses. Like, if you love an ONS, that's political, because if you can even purchase things online is actually political. And if you choose to order from a store that charges you sales tax versus a store that doesn't charge you sales tax is political, because one place might be based in Texas and one place might be based in Missouri, and ordering it to if I order from 123 Stitch, I have to pay sales tax, and if I order from Color and Cotton, and I don't, and that is political. And so that can swing how much a project costs, right? Like everything is political. And so we don't talk a lot about politics on our channel just because Allison and I agree on like 90%, 99%. But the few places where we don't agree with, it's easier just to not talk about it than to argue between us about what we want to say and exactly how we want to say it. And we've just decided this, but there are still things we talk about that other people view as political. Cause like, I think doing Stitch for Pride, I'm doing the Stitch for Pride this year. I need to restart it. And then I finished Stitch for Pride last year. That is, to me, that feels less political because it's where my values are. So to me, it more feels like a value statement, whereas other people might feel like it's politics. Like everything is political. Okay. Change, adjust, every pattern is needed to suit your color, scale, preference, etc. I agree. I mean, like, I don't change patterns that much. It's really rare for me to like cut a border out or something. Unless I just want to quit the project and I just don't want to finish it, and that salvages stitching as a finish as opposed to just throwing it away. But yeah, people should if the project is going to go in your house or be a gift that you give, it should reflect looking the way you want it to look. All right, next one. If my knots are big enough, I knot them to themselves and cut the end. I don't know if that means, like, if your knot is big enough. I don't, like, logistically know what that means. Like, does it mean that if your stuff gets tangled, you just finish your thread in the tangle and call and move on? Or are you knotting 2 knots together. I don't know. I don't use a lot of knots on the back though, so I don't really know. If I'm stitching two-stranded, non-variegated loop start, anything else I stitch like the next 3 stitches over the tail before I like stop finicking with it. I know that's kind of slow, like a slow way to do it, and I would like to. Jordan, the tattoo stitcher, has a really good front and back start pin stitch video that I need to rewatch because I would like to get to that point now that I'm using my stand. Oh, the people in my membership group will be so excited to know I'm actually using my stand. We do like a Sunday stitch together, and I have been saying like, I need to learn my stand. No, I'm using my stand. Not every day, and my kids threaten to hurt themselves on it, but I am using my stand. So I would like to become a front and back, front, start, and ender. But since I'm not doing that yet, I stitch over my tail end and then I run my needle under stitches to finish my piece. So I've heard people say they use knots and stuff, and I've never seen it in person, and so I don't really know what this means. If you want to elaborate in the comments and let us know more, feel free. But as long as it works for you, do it. Like, don't let anyone stop you. If it's working for you, it's working for you. Selling reproduction samplers is stealing from dead people. Okay, so technically, if we want to get like serious about it, technically for most things like art, I believe, this is for entertainment purposes, don't quote this legally, I believe that it's 70 years past the death of the creator. So it's probably unlikely that technically any samplers being reproduced in the 2020s would have been stitched by someone who hasn't been dead for at least 70 years. Macabre. But so probably not technically like copyright theft, but I get what you mean in terms of like, we're kind of like creeping in on people, and like, I mean, and I stitch reproduction samplers sometimes. This is the first reproduction sampler I ever stitched. This is Delia Conger by Antique Needleworkers, and I have 3 that I'm starting in the next 3 weeks because I'm about to go crazy on Sampler September. But I get what you mean in terms of like, if a little 8-year-old girl stitched something in 1820, does she want people digging up her entire life history about it? And should somebody today be making money off of her creativity and artwork when she comes from a totally different system? Especially like I think it's fun to stitch reproduction samplers, and I think there's more issues at play than some people want to think is at play when they stitch them. Or like, I own a antique needlepoint. I thought about reproducing it. One of my friends suggested I not reproduce that one and wait and find one that is maybe more like worth the time to reproduce it. I like it, but anyway. But it is weird to be like, I bought this piece of art that is very old, and I don't know who this stitcher was, but when I bought it, I was told it was an antique. So that would make it pre-1920, so probably out of copyright. And even if it's not fully out of copyright, if someone stitched it in the 1870s and they died, and like, you know, like, it could potentially not be, right? But it still is weird to take their art without. It's weird. Like, it's both fun and something I do participate and will continue to participate in, but there's a little bit of a glorification of it that can kind of feel strange. Like, these little girls are Pokemon characters or something. Okay. The X's don't all have to go the same direction. No, that's crazy. I know who wrote it. Your stitching is beautiful. I'm absolutely not judging your stitching. I can't tell when I look at your stitching. But for me, when I'm stitching something, I think this is the only piece I've ever done because it was the first one I did. This is like one of my own designs where there are a couple stitches that go the other direction. But no, as far as like me actually stitching now, I would rather throw the piece away than have a bunch, like one or two accidentally, yeah, but my brain wouldn't even make that mistake now. But like, and if it was around Robin, that's different because the point is to have different people stitch it, so different stitching styles is fine. But if it was just me stitching and switching it up, oh, there's a big spider over there on the outside of my window. If it's just me stitching it up, switching up, absolutely, absolutely not. But there's no cross stitch police. And if you like the look of the finished piece, and I'm sure it looks great, then do you. 2/2 on 36 count, love it. Agree with caveats. Lakeside linen, I'll do 2/2 on 36 count a lot of the time. Except there's one that I'm doing because I'm doing it with variegated thread. I don't have enough variegated thread to do it 2/2. So I'm doing it 1/1, but I do think it looks a little bit sparse and I might restart it because I'm not that far into it. I might restart it because the problem was I did it 1/1 on 36 because I didn't have enough floss to do it 2/2. But I can't stitch on 40. I don't know what I'm going to do about it. Anyway, agree, except I bought a bunch of Pictureless Plus and I've been stitching 36 count with Pictureless Plus and I tried stitching it 2/2 and it was the worst experience of my life. So I will not be stitching 2/2 on 36 count Pictureless Plus. Just like, no. 36 count, 1/2, Pictureless Plus looks beautiful. So it really depends on the fabric, especially if it's hand dyed. If it's Zweigart based or like a true 36, then there are other factors would contribute to it. But if it's Pictureless Plus, it's not an option for me. And there's other hand dyeds where I'm sure they're just as tight and it would not be an option. All right. Stitching on Aida does not make you a less advanced stitcher than someone who stitches on linen or even weave. I stitch on all three depending on what I would want to do with it. I prefer Aida for stitching since I can enjoy the process more and not get a headache counting. I do prefer the look of linen, but hand-dyed Aida can look good too. I agree. I am a linen first, then Aida, then Lugana stitcher. I prefer the look of linen and I prefer the experience of stitching on linen. But I always keep some Aida projects. One, because I have a ton of like thrift store Aida that I dye and stuff that's like, and I have some like hand-dyed Aidas and I have like some projects that look better on like navy Aida and sometimes stuff is just called for on Aida and you're just like, I'm just going to do it the way it's called for. So I like to have Aida projects for situations where I'm not going to be able to count or pay attention at the level that I need to for linen, but like, or I need to stitch something pretty fast or whatever, and it can look beautiful. Like Allison stitches on really beautiful Aidas all the time. So, and I definitely do full coverage on Aida. So I agree. I mean, even though I'm a linen first person, I don't think there's anything less advanced about being an Aida stitcher. And I do think there is some snobbery in the community about because what it feels like happens is people start on Aida, then they find out they can stitch on linen, and then they start talking like linen is the only option. And I have pieces in here framed, like on that wall even, that are on Aida, and you can't tell like from over here that it's not as like that it's not a linen. Like looking at it, I'm like, is that a even weave? No, that's linen or that's Aida. Like you just can't tell, like because I stitched it before I stitched on linen. So yeah, I agree. I think there's a snobbery that comes with like, and I think a lot of times snobbery and cross stitch ends up being my personal preference is something I need to say as like a universal standard, or my personal preference is accepted by a lot of people as their personal preference too. So we can just talk about it like it's the standard as opposed to remembering that like there's a lot of different levels. I There's a lot of Flosstube channels that I like to watch where the stitcher primarily stitches on Aida and stitches things that I consider very difficult, very fancy. And their stitching is gorgeous. And you have to basically be reminded that it's on Aida when they say the fabric, because you wouldn't even guess it by looking at the piece. So I definitely think there's a little bit of snobbery that maybe some of us, maybe probably even myself included, could like tone down a little bit. All right, next one. Apparently that AI and gatekeeping and racism shouldn't have a space here. All right, let's tackle those one at a time. AI. I don't think AI should have a space anywhere. A town in Arizona just like rejected, I think it was Amazon. One company is like AI plants. Like AI is what we like. I'm a writer as my professional job. AI, I have found my own words in AI. Like there are some topics that are about foreign places where when AI came out, I was the only person who had articles about them in English. And so I had made stylistic choices as a travel professional about how to talk about those places. And then I went into ChatGPT and said like, okay, tell me about this lake in Azerbaijan or whatever. And some of the phrasing coming back was the phrasing that I was the only person with like in English writing like about it. So it was like it was trained on that topic on my article, spinning it back to me to like hurt my business. And my income from writing is down 75% because of all of like between the fact that AI between AI and Google preferencing AI results and all of the other AI garbage on the internet that's now out there about topics, and it is just destroyed independent publishing to the point where like, I mean, if I go to search for like research a trip now, I'm not going to like Google first, and I'm definitely not going to Reddit. Like all those Reddit forums that come up in searches, it's all because Google has a financial stake in Reddit. Like it's not because Reddit is what people really want. It used to, like there's like 10 good blog posts on most topics that you can't even find, like where like experts about a topic have written really in depth, because you got to get through 3 sloggy, crappy AI answers that are full of misinformation, and then a couple Reddit forums from 10 years ago. So like ethically, I have a problem with AI from the like, it is stealing people's work to give back bad information. On a health front, there's health information that I've seen on AI that is like dangerous. Like, so like from a like end user perspective, AI is wrong. People might be like, well, in cross stitch is not that big of a deal. Well, I'm sorry, but like artists own the copyrights to their work and have the right to dictate how that work is used. And if you don't choose to purchase that art from them, then you don't get to use it to train your robots. Like, and I mean, Google and Meta, I think basically, I don't remember who it was, but one of them basically admitted to Congress that if the companies were forced to pay for the commercial usage, because commercial usage is expensive, the commercial usage level of all of the art and books and stuff that they're using to train their models on, that they would not be profitable. So they're already admitting that they have to steal from people to be profitable. So if you bought an AI pattern 5 years ago, it didn't exist, 2 years ago, and you didn't know it, and you want to finish stitching it, like whatever. But if you are knowingly buying AI art now or using AI in art and literature now, that's the problem. Like that is you encouraging companies that stole from people, that their theft meant nothing, and the people that you're hurting whose work was stolen mean nothing. And on top of that, a lot of people are being forced to use AI at work in contexts that really stress them out, and they don't have like the ability to fight. So when you know that people are forced to use AI in a lot of ways that like, so AI, go find cancer, right? Like there are good applications for AI, but most of the AI being forced on our throats are not those applications. And most of the usage of AI that is causing like environmental destructions are not those applications either. So I just don't support companies that are small companies that choose to use AI, because like if I, like, there are large companies that I don't have a choice. I have to do a certain level of business with just to like exist as a person. Um, and that sucks. But I definitely am spending less money than I would have before because the same AI that's made it, like I have less money to spend on those companies because they have used AI to destroy my company. So like it's, so it's cyclical. But if it's a small business and they're choosing to use it when they could do something else, like I'm not talking about like you're forced to have AI in your like photo sharing platform, whatever. It's like if you were choosing to use AI in your forward facing materials, whether it's your pattern or your pattern background, or it feels like your emails are written with AI, then it gives me the ick. And I don't go around telling people not to use you or whatever, but I personally just have the ick. And when someone gets the ick, they don't want to do business with that person. So um, there was a project I was going to start this year that I am no longer going to start because I don't want to buy the pattern, because I don't want to support the person, because the person constantly uses AI, even though the pattern doesn't look like it's AI. So I don't have anything against them, and I hope they just stop. And if they just stop in like a year or two, I'll probably like be like, okay, cool. But if it's just like, if you're cool with people being trampled for like things that are not like life-saving things, then I don't need to. Anyway, that was really long. So that was AI. I don't know what specifically you mean in terms of gatekeeping here. Where I come from in the world of travel, gatekeeping is like if you go to a beautiful location and you don't tag the location, and if someone asks you, pretend like you can't tell them because you are allowed to go to that like sacred space, but they're not allowed to. And it's not like a cultural thing. It's usually honestly white people saying like, this beautiful rock, you can't go to it. And some like they own it when it's like, whatever. It's usually bad, like influencer behavior. And then like Native people have to remind them like that rock is important or sacred because it's our cultural heritage and you don't have the right to gatekeep it. So that is what I am most familiar with and what gatekeeping means. In terms of like I don't want to guess what you mean by that because like I really have I know who wrote this. I have a ton of respect for you and I know you mean something specific. So I'm not going to guess what you mean in cross stitch, but if you want to explain it to me later and we can have a conversation about it, I would love to know. All right, racism shouldn't have a space here. Yeah, racism should not have a space in cross stitch. There are cultural and historic ramifications, consequences of historic and ongoing racism that play out in cross stitch. And when we see it, we should call it out and the person should make a real apology, and then we can all decide how we want to move forward. And if that gives you the ick from that person, then like you don't have to continue to support them. But it does suck that like when something happens and then people want to be like, I would never. And it's like, you are so conditioned by the society you brought up and you don't know that it even is racism. So how can you say like that you would never? Like what you actually mean is that you did it, but you didn't mean to. And that's like a whole other thing. And then you have to decide like, do I want to look at it further? Do I want to examine my like interior about where it came from and actually do better? Or is it easier to just pretend that I don't know that I caused harm? So I mean, we had a call out, not about that, but about something else, where somebody wrote us a very nice note and said like, the thing that you did made me uncomfortable and you don't have to reply or respond. But just wanted to let you know. And so we did not reply or respond because we needed some time to like think about what the thing was. And we were like, but then we talked about it and we're like, yeah, we agreed. We never did that thing on our channel again. We never will do it again. And I appreciated the like call out, but we had to like think about it. We had to be uncomfortable and then we had to change. Right. So, anyway, that was a lot. But I know you, and I know you wanted some good spicy stuff. So you got, I mean, not spicy like for drama, because that's not you, but spicy like as in like serious. And so I hope that I responded the way that I don't know what I'm going with that. But anyway, if you want to talk about it more, I would love to talk about it more. I don't like linen. I always seem to end up with a big fat slub in a weird spot. I do sometimes end up with slubs in weird spots. Sometimes I take the slub out. That's a risk. But sometimes I pick the slub out and then stitch over the weird little piece that's left and you can't see it. But I've never heard anyone talk about that, so I don't know if you're supposed to do that or not. Okay, next one. There's lots of defending and ignoring bad behavior in this community, and I'm tired of it, to be honest. Okay, guys. You guys are killing, I mean, this is good stuff. And also, you guys are putting me on the spot. I don't know specifically what bad behavior you're referring to, unless it's like what we just talked about, like things that are racist or subtly tangentially related or sexist or bigoted in some other way, where the person is kind of getting away with being like, oh, I didn't know, or like I wouldn't mean to, and it's like, yeah, okay. And then they get a pass because people like them, and that happens, and it sucks. I would prefer people ask them to do better, and then the community be like, you know, accept real, like if we got real apologies, we can accept real apologies. Or if it's just a private situation like what we went through, that's not the correct term. What our experience was, where somebody said something that bothered me, but you don't need to respond, and we didn't respond, but we changed, like, that maybe didn't make it better for that person, but maybe it could make it better for other people. I don't know what specific bad behavior would be other than things like that, because it's not like we're all like going to the sock hop or something together, or like, you know, we're not like, I don't think this feels like it's related to like community stuff. Now, I do think there are times, I saw a meme where it was like, well, I think there are times when people can be not too critical, but too harsh for the level of offense or for the action that was taken. Like an action can happen that is bad behavior, but the reaction can be too much and it doesn't give that person any space to grow or change. That's like situational, and it's hard to address as like a should that be different situation. I really think in cross stitch it's mostly about people just get the ick and then they kind of just quietly don't stitch that person or go to that place or talk about that thing, and then it's just kind of quietly like it ends up being like something people don't really talk about that much, and it's a secret, but you know why you don't do it and other people don't know why you don't do it, and that's kind of hard because this is a space that people come to because we love like the crafts and we like doing the craft together, but that doesn't mean we agree on all this other stuff. But then the other stuff feels like it's heavier and heavier and heavier, and people have different breaking points about where they want to like not have it just be about crafting, and it's just hard. It's hard. I also think there is something I was talking to with a friend recently. A lot of people come to not cross stitch, but like Flosstube and cross stitch Instagram and stuff because they want community, and maybe day-to-day life is a little bit lonely and hard, and they love their craft, and no one does their craft in life, but then they find this great community. And if they don't find the cross stitch community, they might find a tradwives community or an anti-vax community or something that is like gonna prey on their vulnerability for wanting community, like, but actually put them in a situation where now they're being pressured into like reading propaganda that is not good for them. So actually having a space that lets people from a lot of different backgrounds come together, but like gives people like a safe haven to just talk about something else and find community and feel good. And it's no one's preying on, like we're not preying on each other. And like there's just so many dangerous places online that this feels safe, even when it's not 100% always the best place to be. I do call out bad behavior when it's like someone coming into my comments saying, I haven't had any racist stuff in my comments, but I had somebody come and saying I shouldn't put my pronouns up and stuff. And it's like, me putting my pronouns up doesn't hurt you. And if you don't want to put your pronouns up, you are still allowed to come into my space as long as you are like good in my space and not. So anyway, that's kind of how I feel like. I feel like it's a good thing that it is a cross-political space up to the point where someone is saying something like outright hurtful or dangerous, because we can kind of keep everyone from some of these darker places online that are really unsafe and unhealthy and prey on people who need community. And we're a lot of women and men who are looking for community, because if it was just about the craft, we wouldn't need it. Like if it's just about you like to cross stitch, you would just watch a couple tutorials and you would never watch a Flosstube video. But we like watching the Flosstube videos because we like the comfort and the friendship and the camaraderie and the body doubling and feeling togetherness. And that's the like something in us that could go in a really scary place if you were really lonely and the wrong people got you. So anyway, that might sound crazy, but I've been reading and thinking about that a lot lately. This video is a lot deeper. I thought this was going to be a lot funnier, but it's a lot deeper, but that's okay. I mean, I'm just responding to what you guys are saying, and I'm just telling you my honest reactions to it. So, guys, you're going to get me in trouble. Okay, I do not care for primitive patterns. It's okay. There's a lot of different styles of cross stitch. There are some that I just purely do not care for. I like primitive patterns up to a point, but I stitch a lot of different things and I couldn't stitch just one kind of pattern. So I have primitive patterns on the go and I have other things on the go too. But there are definitely types of cross stitch that I'm not, you'll never see me stitching, but I actually like to watch other people stitch them, even though they're not for me. I will spend my money on cross stitch over necessities like new bras and underwear. Agree. 100% agree. I don't like to stitch autumn patterns running to hide. Okay. I love stitching autumn patterns, but I do like to stitch seasonally in season, and I'm not super into, like, I don't ever want to pick up an autumn pattern pretty much any other time of year. I'm not like a Halloween is a lifestyle person, but I don't dislike it either. Like, it's okay. And you don't have to like it. You don't have to, I mean, there are a lot of browns and golds and you don't have to like it. It's okay. Print patterns are boring and lack color and life. Okay. I should have put these in the same one. I didn't catch that. It is a different color palette, and it's okay to not want to stitch them. It's okay to not want to stitch them. I like them. I don't only want to stitch them, but I like them. But you can stitch whatever you want and whatever you like. Stitching a reproduction sampler is overdone. Every sampler should be unique. So I love reproduction samplers, and also I could never only stitch reproduction samplers. I'm just the kind of person where I can't understand the urge to stitch only one kind of thing, no matter what that one kind of thing is. Like, I have reproduction samplers and mirrors and fall stitching and Halloween stitching and Christmas stitching and like modern interpretations of samplers and just all kinds of different stuff. I have vintage patterns on the go and vintage patterns I want to start and modern patterns, and like I just like everything. I don't really fully understand only stitching one kind of thing at all. But I think where this like wanting to push back on reproduction samplers comes from is the snobbiness that I'm sorry, if you love reproduction samplers, I like reproduction samplers, but there are some people who are snobby and only stitch reproduction samplers, and they act like all other stitching isn't as good as that. Instead of just being like, this is what I like and everybody can like what they like. There is a weird thing about it. That you don't get from other parts of cross stitch. Like, I don't feel like the people who only like full coverage, they don't have they only like full coverage and they only stitch full coverage and they don't talk about other people's stitching like it's not as good as their stitching. There's just something strange. And it doesn't really, in my experience, come from the floss tubers and designers like I'm not accusing anybody of this in particular. I'm just saying there is a and you know it. And if you don't want to say it out loud, it's okay. But there is, and there are people who only stitch reproduction samplers and like that kind of stitching, who you never get that feeling from ever when they're talking about their cross stitch thing. That you never get the feeling from them that they look down on other kinds of stitching. So it's not the act. It is truly there are different attitudes that come out, and there's also an attitude of like a hierarchy of types of stitching, or that like reproduction and like modern samplers, especially prim colors, are better than other samplers and stuff. And so then you get people wanting to push back on that. And if you don't feel that way, then you're probably not, if you in your heart you don't feel that way, then you're probably not the person that is making other people feel that way either. I think some of the stuff comes from people feeling like people who stitch certain things are looking down on other stitchers like they're not as good as them. So if you don't feel that in your heart, then you're not the problem, right? This is a not all men situation. This is not a not all men situation. You don't need to tell me I only stitch reproductive samplers and I also wouldn't look down on anyone else. Just examine it in your heart. Like, do you look down on certain types of stitching? And if you do, does it come out, not like you don't want to stitch it, but do you look down on the people that stitch it? Do you look down on the fact that it exists? Do you feel like it makes your craft not as like respected because other people are stitching things that are less? And I've seen videos like this. So this is of after 2 years of watching Flosstube almost every day, like this exists, these attitudes exist. So just, if you don't feel it in your heart, then it's not you. That's the problem. But if you can't even acknowledge that that might be something that exists and other people might feel that way, then maybe you need to look inward. People are going to hate this video. That's okay. I love French knots. No, French knots are not good. Down. No, I don't. I'm glad that other people are good at French knots and like them. I am probably going to be a put beads instead of French knots person because I just learned to bead this week and it took me less time to learn how to bead than to how to do French knots. So, but you do you. All right. Now, stitching a pattern and making modifications doesn't make one a designer. I would say one is as a crafter. I love being crafty. I have never heard someone call themselves a designer based on taking someone else's pattern and making changes to it. So I don't know if this is just something I haven't seen out there that people do. If you're talking about like people taking like known like quicker motifs or something, or reproducing a sampler doesn't make them a designer, I would say it still does make them a designer, because being a designer is about more than doing like like there are a lot of different levels of being a designer and different things that go into it, but what actually a designer is someone who creates cross stitch patterns and the different ways their artwork takes them to get them to the point where it exists in the world is really not what makes them a designer. What makes them a designer is that they publish cross stitch patterns that they have created through whatever use that they want to do, as long as it really comes from their hard work and isn't just like I stuck this AI picture in a thing, right? Like, so if you are painstakingly stitch by stitch writing down what's on a reproduction sampler, if you are looking through Quaker motif books and coming up with new ways to put them in and have new meaning and new spin, I am a designer. I don't publish a ton, but I am a designer. I am a travel photographer. I take my travel photography, I chart it, then I go through and make changes to make sure that it's like a more friendly stitch. So like this is one of my designs. I didn't make it the same way that someone would chart a sampler because I physically went to Utah, took the picture, edited the photo, then years later discovered cross stitch and decided to take that hard work and use it to turn it into cross stitch. So there's different avenues to becoming a designer. I think it's the act of getting the work out into the world for other people in a way that they can actually take and stitch from it that is harder than people might realize, because not every person who does art wants to do or even photos or anything, wants to do the work of getting it into a stitchable place. I do not like alphabets and patterns. It takes up too much space and is repetitive. Most of the alphabet styles are similar and are just put in order in the same line. It takes away from the rest of the pattern. I like stitching alphabets. I started stitching an alphabet last night. I think it's totally cool to remove an alphabet if you don't want to stitch it. And also it's totally cool if you love stitching alphabets and do want to stitch it. I think having them in modern pieces acknowledges the history and the fact that it's part of the style in the same way that a lot of like artwork and craft and design has elements of bygone eras in it that maybe you wouldn't use if you started from scratch today, but like acknowledge the history. So I don't think there's a problem in it. But if you don't like it, you do you and take it out. All right. This one was really popular. The back doesn't matter. I can travel as many stitches as I want to. I carry threads and don't care what the back looks like. That was 3 different people's put together. I think in the same way that people bristle about feeling judged about not wanting to stitch only reproduction samplers, so then they push back. I think that the amount of people that wrote in, because there were more than just this too, that wrote in that like backs don't matter, comes from a place of feeling judged about their backs. If you want a neat back, do it. But if you're putting energy into the world that other people should have neat backs, and it's not for like practical purposes, it's not for practical purposes, it's for like, it's not good enough unless the back is neat, then you're causing other people stress and anxiety about their projects in a way that like, that just doesn't need to happen. If you're teaching cross stitch to someone, you want to teach someone how to have a neat back or whatever, wonderful. But at the end of the day, if this piece has a really messy back, which it does, it absolutely does not affect the, like, you cannot see it. It does not affect the like level, right? Like I put a layer of quilt batting on it, then lay this on top of it. It helps even it all out. There's no place that sticks out. Like the back here is between me and my God. So like, if you're putting energy out in the world that other people need to worry about their backs and it's not for like specific practical reasons, then you might be causing some people stress. Because clearly in these answers it was reflected that people feel judged and stressed about it. If you are showing people the backs of your work to show them like what they look like because you just want to be helpful, great. And like also there's different levels of like, I have neater backs on pieces where it makes sense because of the way that I want to finish it or the color of the floss and the color of the fabric. So knowing the techniques to have a neat back are really great, especially if you ever want to do like double-sided stitching or something. But like to just be like all backs should be neat all the time, if it serves no purpose, like you're just causing other people stress and anxiety. And so if you really feel like that, that's fine. But putting that out in the world might not be doing you any kindnesses. Floss drops, thumbs down. I love floss drops. I hate making them. I hate getting the floss ready for them. So I'm going to be doing less and less of that in my life, but I like using them. But I also think that, again, there is like a level of floss drops good, bobbins bad, that has made the people who like bobbins or like storing their stuff other ways feel judged and feels a little bit like it's not coming from a you do you space. It's coming from like a this is the only way space. So like, let's just check ourselves. I go back and forth. I love a nice set of floss drops. I love when I buy like all of the called for General Arts or something and they're all just already pre-floss dropped. Like that's my favorite. But as a practical place, like with DMC and stuff, I have to be doing bobbins for just like my life to be functioning. All right, paper is better than digital. You do you. I think there is something nice, just like there's something nice about knowing all the ways to have a clean back and then executing it where it makes sense. There might be situations where you would, where actually if somebody who doesn't know how to use digital knew how to use digital, if they have access to digital, that it would be nice for them to know because there are some projects where it just makes a huge difference. But If you prefer paper, then do paper. Like if you do both and you prefer paper, then do paper. Allison used to be digital, but then her tablet broke, and so now and she doesn't like doing it on her phone. So now she's doing it back to paper, and she's happy because she'd prefer to do that than upgrade her tablet. So just you do you. But I think sometimes it's nice to have all the skills and execute them where they make the most sense, as opposed to being afraid of learning something. But I know you, and I don't think that's where that's coming from. I think you know all of them, and you just are kind of a analog person. Like I'm very digital person, but I'm like analog in other ways. Like I own a old typewriter over there. I like sewing on Aida, even weave nope, linen nope, Aida all the way. So again, I should have put this with the other Aida ones, but you do you. There's a lot of reasons why Aida makes sense for people. It's more economical. It's easier to see. You can still get tiny, tiny stitches on it. And you can stitch almost, there's nothing you could not stitch on Aida that, and like even like specialty stitches and stuff, if you have the patience to pierce the cloth. So nobody should be telling people they can't do it. To be honest, if something is out of print or outdated, I'm not against turning it myself. I'm going to disagree because I do really think that copyright law, and as a writer, like I own my work and I own it because I created it. And if I choose to put something out of print, then for sale doctrine means that you can, if this was my pattern, it's not, but I only sell digital patterns right now. But if I sold a paper pattern and I sell it to you, you have the right to take the physical thing that you buy and resell it. But you don't have the right to take the physical thing you bought and redistribute it just because I have decided that I no longer want to produce it, or I have died and my family doesn't want to produce it, or whatever. So I'm going to disagree. I know it comes from a place of like, who does it hurt? But as someone who like, my copyrights are very important. Like what I own is very important to me because I am a creator who created them. I'm just going to disagree. Backs don't matter. Okay, that one should have been with the other ones. I'd rather do confetti stitches than big blocks of color. I get bored with the repetitiveness. No, I would not. Okay. No, that's not true. I love big blocks of color because I like to save them for situations where they make sense for me to do them when I can't stitch anything else. So I like to save my big blocks of color for like retreats, or when I go to my parents, or my kids are like awake but they're being chill. And confetti stitching, I can't do that. I don't mind confetti stitching on like full coverage and stuff because I do gridded and I travel. I don't love confetti stitching in like things where I can't get away with traveling. I don't like starting and stopping a thread for 1 or 2 stitches. That bugs me. I was actually watching Two Tall Stitchers last night, and the big blocks of color was their like question of the episode or whatever. So it was funny. So if you want to hear more people's answers on that, go check out their most recent video. But yeah, I'm totally a outline or get to a place on a block of color where you can set it aside for chaos, what I call chaos stitching, when like I can't pay attention to the pattern, but I want to be physically stitching, but chaos is happening all around me. I agree with those who are saying samplers and alphabets are not something I want to stitch. I should have put that with the other ones, but yeah, like if there's a part of a pattern you don't want to stitch, don't stitch it. Like that's totally fine. And I get annoyed when people are like, you have to do the pattern exactly as the creator made it. If the creator wanted their artwork to only be done that specific way, they would make prints or posters or sell it as like a graphic. Creating something for other people to execute means there are going to be differences in the execution. It's really weird to obsessively replicate the stitching errors of young children from 100 years ago. If there is a mistake, fix it. Okay. Okay, I see both ways. In terms of like if you're reproducing a sampler and they like went over 3 threads instead of 2 threads or whatever, I know that like people feel like something's not a reproduction unless it's done exactly the way the original stitcher did it. However, people who are like actually like fiber art historians don't always appreciate and kind of think what we consider to be a reproduction not always like doesn't always make sense to them. So I think if there's a mistake in the reproduction and the pattern points it out and you want to fix it, fix it. But I don't think it's a problem if the pattern is replicated exactly the way the original was, because that's technically what they're selling you. And anything else is technically in our world a reinterpretation, even though our reproductions aren't what like historians consider reproductions. I lick my floss to thread the needle, and then someone else said I lick my floss. And the two people who submitted this are two of my favorite stitchers who stitch amazing things. And so, and not even the person who I would have thought would have submitted it, but I lick my floss. The other day, my mom's a dental hygienist, so she's very into like teeth are not tools. And I went to lick my floss, and she thought I was biting my floss. I was like, no, I'm just licking it to thread my needle. I lick my floss all the time. How the back of your, oh yeah, we already talked about. Oh no, apparently I had a group of like how your backs don't matter, and then this is a separate group compilation of how your backs don't matter. People, this is like the number one thing people were like wanted to say was that. So, but I don't think there's like a huge community of people who care about the backs of other people's stuff. I think it's just like comes from a place of feeling judged. I don't like how my backstitch looks. I don't like how my backstitch looks. And I don't think I'm very good at backstitch, and I don't think I'm very neat about it. I would like to get better at it, but I don't like my backstitch. I agree. If you're going to use a quote in the pattern, the total design and the quote must go together. For example, if it's a Jane Austen quote about a library, the design should have books or an actual library in it, not just traditional motifs that are in every other sampler. Okay. I don't like when the quote and the picture have like cognitive dissonance, even though there are some patterns that I really like. Okay. I one day will stitch Live on Little, so I'm not calling Live on Little out as like a grievous error. But it is wild and funny to me that the quote is about living on little, and there's like a sailboat and a mansion, right? And maybe 100 years ago or 200 years ago, that house would have cost nothing. But that house today would cost millions of dollars. So to me, even though I love that piece, I definitely want to stitch it one day. And I think it's beautiful. And the reason I feel comfortable using that as an example is because one day you're going to see it right here. It is hilarious to me that it's about how like we should live on little, but the Live on Little is a New England mansion and like a private boat with like your own mermaid, right? Like there is, so I don't like it when there's cognitive dissonance, except for that pattern where I'm going to stitch it anyway. But I think if the pattern is like a quote and then like Quaker motifs or like just like a generic scene that doesn't like go against the quote, maybe it doesn't go with the quote, but it doesn't go against the quote, then I think then it doesn't bother me at all. I love fill-in because I can zone out and not think. Agreed. No, I find it very boring if I'm like gonna sit down and stitch and all I get to stitch that night is fill-in. But I like fill-in if I'm gonna sit down at like a retreat or something. I want to sit and just zone out of my stitching, but be getting it done and then enjoy what's going on around me. That you need a different size needle for different fabric counts because a large eye will open up the linen too much and distort it. I use this, no, I've used the same size needle for everything. Thank you. I agree. I mean, I don't stitch super tiny stuff, but sometimes I'll be at like out and about and I only have a size 24 needle and I'm stitching on 36 count and it's fine. It's totally fine. Now, in that case, I would prefer a 28 or a 26, but like the 24 is fine. It doesn't do anything. Now, I don't know if you can use a 24 on a 56. Like, I don't know if that's stretching the bounds. It'd be interesting. But as far as like for me, I stitch on everything from 14 to 36. I do prefer 26 and 28 needles for 36, but if I only have a 24 and it's used the 24 I don't stitch, I will stitch. Hands down. And also, I was beading yesterday with a size 24 needle because the beads were a little bit thicker, and so I could still use my needle, and I only switched to the beading needle when I got switched to the beads that needed it. All samplers look the same. Okay. This feels like a fine wine palette situation. I think when I started stitching, all samplers looked the same to me, and now I've just looked at hundreds of samplers and thousands of samplers, and some of them, there can be samplers that are all the same style, but one will stand out as the one I need to stitch and then the others won't. And then also like I think of Virlanda and a Quaker. They may seem similar, but they're different. You know, like a modern sampler is different than a reproduction. You know, when you start to be able to tell, like, oh, that's a Dutch sampler, that's a Scottish sampler, like for sure that's, you know, that is a like a Bristol sampler. Like, it's just kind of one of those things. The more you look at it, the more you can tell the differences. Now, does that mean you want to stitch all those different kinds of samplers? No, like, and it doesn't mean you need to even want to stitch a single sampler. But I do actually really enjoy. I'll never be somebody who only stitches samplers, but I'm really enjoying learning about them. Like, I would love to go to like a fancy sampler weekend, even if I'm not a fancy sampler stitcher. 99% of quotes or sayings on cross-stitch patterns are incredibly trite, and most of them are written in ugly fonts. Okay. So during the pandemic, when I was pregnant, no, the year before the pandemic, so I was pregnant in 2019. But I continued this after I had my baby, so through the pandemic. I was having a hard time focusing and writing, so I was like collecting quotes and publishing articles. It was like the 20 best quotes about London, the best vacation and travel quotes, the best quotes about beaches. And that used to make me a lot of money. It doesn't anymore. But I used to rank, like if you Googled like any country's quote, like quotes about any country or city, I used to rank for those. And so I've read probably more like famous quotes than most people. And I even, if you Google quotes about Bulgaria, if you find my article, I have quoted myself in that article because I took my own quotes about the country of Bulgaria from, or maybe it's the city of Sofia, but I've written for National Geographic about visiting Sofia, Bulgaria, and then I took quotes from that article, put it in the best quotes about, because I couldn't find like a ton of good ones. So I've thought about this quite a bit. There are a lot of interesting quotes out in the world, and I do think people should feel really comfortable changing quotes to things they care about or meaningful to them, because the person who created the original sampler either picked something really meaningful to them, or they picked something they didn't care about at all. But either way, it shouldn't matter really to you, unless the quote sparks joy. Now, I think from a designer perspective, it's kind of silly to put quotes that people aren't going to resonate with people on things unless if it's not a reproduction, because the quotes resonating with people are a lot of times why people buy the samplers, right? So it's all, it's all what you want. But like if there is a quote that doesn't resonate with you, but the rest of the sampler does, change it. Like, change it to something you love. And if you don't like the font, there are lots of font books out there where you can change the fonts to things. So it would not keep me from stitching something that I really loved, other than the quote. But a really good quote, like, can relate. Like, would Summer Quaker be as beloved if the quote wasn't as good? No. It's part of it is that quote is so, like, within the context of the design, right? Stitching clothes on woodland creatures is overdone. Not every critter needs a closet. I love the whimsical nature of animals and clothes, but there are a lot of animals without clothes in samplers, so you're definitely not like bereft of things to stitch. However, it is funny in cross stitch. We really do love a personified animal. We do. I'm not going to apologize for it, but I could see if you're not into that it would be like, why is it everywhere? Not an opinion, but more of a messy preference, or more of a preference. I can't stand a messy back. So you're the problem. Like, no, I'm just kidding. Just to go into, again, you should have the back as neat as you want it to be, and as your time and patience will allow, and your skill set will allow. And other people are not inviting you to look at the backs of their cross stitch. Like, part of it is just that, like, other people aren't saying, like, here, look at my back. Do you like it or not? It's like, if they're showing the back, it's mostly just to, like, let other people with messy backs feel better. But if you like a messy back, fine. If you like a clean back, fine. But, like, let's not push on people that their backs need to be clean to meet a standard when if the finished product is in no way going to be. So, like, the back of this is neater than the back of this because this is full coverage is in it. But even this, the back of some of the places are clearer than others because I'm not running threads where you can see them, but the back of this submarine is a hot mess, right? So just don't push it on other people. Do you. And we appreciate it and we think it's great. But to me, it doesn't impress me as like your overall finish is better because the back that nobody sees is neat. It's not like a garment of clothing or whatever where the seams and stuff being neat really matter because the way that the article is used, it matters. But I don't think anyone should feel bad about caring about a messy or a clean back or feel bad that like they want to put the extra time into being a slower stitcher because of it. Like it's basically do whatever makes you happy. French knots are the devil's work and you can't tell me otherwise. Agreed. I don't know if we already did this one or we did one that was the opposite, like I love French knots, but agreed. I don't care for weeks dye works floss. It just tangles for me no matter what I do. I don't stitch with weeks, except for the weeks that I had already bought before I stopped stitching with them. And the greens tangle on me a lot. I've heard that it's just that it's drier and that like using beeswax can really help. But I don't know 100% if that's true. I just cover everything to Classic Colorworks and Gentle Arts or Color Cotton. So that every little girl who stitched a sampler was so delighted with their life. Some of these girls loathe those things and probably hate that they're still around. I think that's really interesting, and I would love to really know more. Like we talk about like the Ackworth School or like Bristol Orphanage, like, and I have never watched the videos or anything where people really go into what we know about like what life was like in those places. It's hard with like time was so different. You know, like were they happy to be stitching because it was better than an alternative, but also like any art. So like from that perspective, I don't know if the conditions that most of these samplers were stitched in would have been something that like would have felt good to the people. You know what but like globally, you can say some of the samplers that are still around would have represented like a very high achievement that someone would have been very proud of. And some of them are probably a lot of terrible memories. And so it is weird to like have something that we call by that person's name, but we don't have any idea of like their real experience with it. And we spend hours and we love it. And sometimes we try to find out more about it, but it's not like we're going to find their secret diary that tell us everything really about it. So it's just something interesting to keep in mind when you talk about like work of someone that was stitched 200 or 300 years ago, that their life is not like our life, and what you're envisioning their life was like may not be accurate, and some of it may be wishful thinking. And even just like to take some of these like historic artifacts but not learn anything else about it is kind of hard sometimes. Like I do think like I know a lot about Quaker samplers without knowing much about what life was really like. And I actually know like a weird amount about like modern Quakerism between living in Pennsylvania, and then I had a friend who worked for the like Quaker lobby group in DC. And so we used to talk about it. It's very interesting. But so I have a lot of respect for Quakerism, but I don't really know much about like what it would have really been like to be 11 or 8 and expected to stitch at that level. But I was a better sewist at 7 than I am now, alternatively. And also like it's culture and survival, it's family. Like it just goes back to like it was always political. Like, you know, it was a different type of political, but the circumstances that different women ended up doing these things in are political. And for some it represents like opportunity, and for some it represents wealth and status and family, and for some it means like, you know, career. Some women went on to be like literal spinsters who like did fiber arts as a way to avoid bad marriages, and some were relegated to doing this probably to the point where their hands got arthritis. Like I think it's fun when you learn about it, and I like watching the Flosstubes where people are like, this is like where you learn about this stuff. But it is hard just to not see that like maybe we glamorize it a little bit, and maybe like And I think some people who feel that way end up stitching the modern interpretations of samplers instead, because it feels less like it involves that, but that stuff is still based on that stuff. So it still is part of the legacy of it. So maybe what we should all be doing is learning more about what life was really like, and like if we consider ourselves fiber artists as part of a legacy of stitchers, that we should learn more about what the issues surrounding stitching were, and not just be like in our bubble of like craft. I don't know. It's really interesting. Okay, so this video got a lot spicier than I expected. You guys really didn't let me have an easy one. Like editing easy, yes, but like, oh, I just put myself out there in a lot of different ways. So if you liked what you see, please subscribe, because I'm sure I'll have some unsubscribes. So we can just balance this out. If you've never seen this before, but you want to hear more, you know, this channel is mostly about like our personal stitching and then fun extras like this. So there's more ideas where this came from. And then maybe in a year or two, we'll do another round of hot takes and see if they've changed. And there were some things you guys didn't talk about, like as much as I would have expected, like finances and money and things. So there's definitely more hot takes that I've heard and secret rooms out there that we can talk about in the future if you guys want to talk about that down the road. But anyway, so basically stitch what you want to stitch. Don't judge other people for stitching what they want to stitch. Lift people up, don't tear people down. And if we're going to do this art form together, we just need to acknowledge that it comes from a historical, political, and financial place in the past, and that that some of those things have carried over, and we are doing it in the context of our current world, which means there are financial, political, racial, access issues that surround it today. And let's all be kind to each other. And yeah, so if you made it to this point in the video, I would love to know if there was any hot takes that stuck out to you with kindness, where you agree or disagree with either their opinion or my opinion, but with kindness. I'll delete any like negative comments just because I don't want it to be, these are people's real opinions that they put out there, and I was giving you my real opinion. So let's just be kind. If you made it to this point in the video, leave a pepper emoji, because this video got a little spicy. A little bit spicy. I feel a little vulnerable right now. Okay. I'm going to release this video. I'm not going to delete it, but I definitely feel a little vulnerable. So, and I'm sure that at some points I sounded real dumb to people who know more about topics than me, and that's okay. You are more than welcome to politely, with kindness, correct me if you feel that's something you want to do. You definitely are not required to do that. But you are welcome to either DM me or leave a comment if there's something you want me to take into consideration. I feel like my opinion should be reevaluated, especially on some of these more sensitive topics. You're not going to hurt well, as long as you're being kind, you're not going to hurt my feelings. If you're like, then I'm just going to delete it. So anyway, all right, I'm going to go. I'm going to shut up. All right, if you're not subscribed, subscribe. And Monday will be a Flosstube, hopefully. But childcare is getting difficult until between now and when school starts in a couple weeks. So I'm hoping to have a regular Flosstube on Monday. I'm hoping to have a nice size finish on Monday, but I got to power through a couple last minute things between now and then to make it happen. And members, I'll see you on Sunday. And feel free, members, to tell me what I got wrong when we see each other on Sunday at our Stitch Together. Okay, bye.